Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday, the first Friday of 2024, which coincides with the final week of the 2023 NFL season. You got to love how those things spill over. We are going to be previewing all the Week 18 action. If you are like me and you have a 2-week finals, prayers up, because there are not a lot of great fantasy-worthy players that are playing this week. We will touch on that when we go through the full preview. I am joined by Dennis. How are you this fine Friday?
Dude, I am stoked. I've got 2 days off. I had a short week. You know, 1-1 league, second place in another, third place in a couple others. You know, what are you going to do? I enjoy it. Now it's Dynasty season. You know, over at Dynasty Nerds, this is when the real work begins.
Yeah, the one league that I have that's got a 2-week final is where we drafted NFL teams. And basically you have the entire roster for those teams. You don't even have to put them all on your team on waivers. So fortunately for me, I have the Buffalo Bills, the Broncos, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are all need to win in this final week. I don't know if Detroit's going to play a lot of their players, so I might strip them out of my lineup. But the poor guy I'm going against has the Chargers, which are a mash unit, the Browns, who are
sitting everybody,
and he has one other. I think he has the Ravens too, which I thought was interesting. I'm 15 points down, but I'm feeling pretty good about the idea. But I will literally be going to the last game of the regular season to find out, because all my good players in Buffalo.
What, Snoop Huntley's going to go off and have a monster game?
I wouldn't
make you really sweat it.
Well, you may have only won one championship, but fortunately your household can boast 2 fantasy championships, and that's because your wife Jackie destroyed me in the finals of our show league, where, you know, Chubb's broken wheel had some magic luck until we got to the playoffs. But we are happy to have not one but 2 Bennetts with us today. Jackie, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you very much.
So obviously your team started out a little bit behind in the beginning of the season and had a furious charge to the playoffs, and seemed like you were really rolling. But what were you thinking, you know, at the beginning after your draft and seeing how your team started the season?
Well, I was nervous for the draft. So when it had been a few years since I even got on one of the fantasy leagues. While I hear about football 24 hours a day, 360 million days a year. I was just trying to draft by myself, and I didn't want his input at all. And so
it would be a good thing, seeing how
it did. Those are the fun moments. But, I was excited about the draft. I kind of followed. I was kind of watching how other people were drafting and what positions they were picking. And I was doing everything I can to make sure I didn't talk to him, because I wanted this to be my own. I didn't want him to be like, oh, I helped her in these things. So I thought I had a pretty good draft going into it. And I came out of the gates where I won a few games, and it was pretty exciting. And so I thought, hey, maybe I could hang in there a little bit, and the dream was to beat him. That was my dream, and so it's kind of cool. The dream happened.
Oh yeah, because you did upset him, I think, head to head, right?
Yeah, she
yes.
what week was it? She beat me by 50 points in week 11.
Yeah, just a couple. That was probably one of my favorite nights of the year, I will say. So I liked it.
Yeah, it was a bloodbath. I will I will say, as bad as I feel about that, at least I didn't lose to her twice, Matt.
Yeah, good point. So I was pretty
Oh,
excited.
did I lose during it's possible I lost during the regular
did.
season.
You did.
Yeah,
I
I had
was your
so many.
first loss.
And she beat John Hamler's in week 6.
I remember toward the end of the season, my team
Lost
I
his
was
magic.
I was trying to put it together with some glue. That glue kind of went out the window when you have to start Jaron Hall in a meaningful game.
So, hey, Jackie, so when you were drafted, and we're all sitting there drafted, and you're like, I'm going to do this on my own, and you didn't take a running back until the 10th round. So that strategy is like one of the more recent, probably within the last 10 years, a zero running back strategy. And you seem to have executed it perfectly. Was that by conscious design, just how the board fell to you? And then when you did take a running back, your first running back was Devin Singletary in the 10th round. Now I will say you also you hit the 10th round and you went running back in your next 3 rounds with Singletary, Jamal Williams, and Brian Robinson. Was that the plan, or did you just get to the 10th round and go, oh hey, I should probably get a running back?
Do you want the truth, or do you want me to make up an answer of how this went? So I'll just tell you the truth. So I knew I needed to get a quarterback right off the bat. So I knew that. And then I knew I needed to get some wide receivers. And I was kind of watching how the draft other people were drafting. But then I got a little caught up in a lot of the names that I hear at times in the house and from the podcasts and from you talking. And so I got a little caught up early on. And then I realized I had not drafted a running back. And literally the next one I'm ready to draft was a running back. And you're texting me, you have no running backs. You have no running backs. And so you were all in my business. And I was really mad because it was like, I'm getting there. Just leave me alone. And unfortunately, because I'm not as savvy of a dynasty or even a football draft, I may have selected some wrong running backs. I felt it later in the season when I was struggling with some running backs that I needed to put up, and I wish I had a few more. So lesson learned, maybe get a few more early on.
Well, it wasn't bad, other than you didn't necessarily take as many top tier wide receivers. You took Cooper Kupp in the second. Well, years past, that was fantastic, but Kupp got injured, came into the season injured, missed some time. Then you went DK Metcalf. Geno Smith didn't have the same year he did last year. So you made the playoffs. You were the 6th seed. You went 7-7, but you were the 4th highest scoring team. So you were making the right calls on a week-to-week basis, and you made some good trades. You did end up drafting both Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, but you were fortunate that your sister drafted 19 Cleveland Browns, and so it was in her best interest to trade a wide receiver, and you were able to move Lockett for Elijah Moore. Now, Moore didn't have a fantastic year, but he did have some games. There were some games where Romeo Doubs, who was your, 15th, 14th round pick, stepped up, had some good weeks. My biggest question was, so you drafted Kyren Williams, and then he started off hot. So you were that's like the ideal 0 RB pick to take an 18th round running back that at that point was like a top 5 running back. And then he got injured. And he was out, ended up missing like 6 weeks between his injury and the bye weeks. And so you what was it, week 9 or week 11, somewhere in there, you traded him straight up for Saquon Barkley. Now Williams finished the year at RB 5, I think, and Barkley at RB 9. Or let's see.
I think at the time, right, Kyron hadn't come
Or
back.
16. So Barkley was RB 16. So you weathered the storm. You got points for the last few weeks. I think Williams was out 3 weeks. But did it make you nervous when Williams came back and was just hotter than heck? Because we saw Dan Roberts, who you traded with, he was smoking the last 3 weeks. If he had gotten into the playoffs, he would have been a team I feared.
No, I think I look at injuries and like what kind of injuries, how long they're out. And I just kind of think about like how someone can recover. And if they get hit again, how easy they can be knocked out again. And so, no, I just went ahead and I don't have so much heart into as much knowledge. And so I think sometimes not knowing is better than maybe you guys who know everything. And so we make trades a little easier.
So speaking of easy trades, so we made a swap of quarterbacks. So
we did.
I traded you Tua for Lamar Jackson.
We did.
Which Lamar finished as QB4 and Tua, I think, is QB11 or something. Did you feel like you were getting one over on me, trading me Lamar?
Absolutely. If you looked at Tua's numbers, we were good this season. So he pulled some great numbers. I think that's one of the things was my quarterbacks were so really pulling me in some nice, solid numbers each week. And that was getting me through at times. And Tua was one of it. To be honest, the most argument we had over Tua was how to say his last name because there's no N in his last name, but yet you say an N every time and it drives me bananas.
That's how it's pronounced.
So, but anything that I could do to be able to knock you down a peg it's exciting in football.
Well, to be fair, I then a week later I traded Lamar away for Joe Burrow, and that was part of the reason my team.
Oh, that was a great trade for you, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Until Burrow got hurt.
Exactly. Yep.
So how was it? Your sister Beth played in the league with us. I'm not sure if she's going to come on with us, not today, but at another time. How was it playing fantasy football? It was her first league. How was it playing in a league with your sister?
It was a little much at times. She wanted to trash talk. That was her name, her screen name. And none of you guys would trash talk with her. So she was constantly trash talking with me. And so that got a little old after a while. We did have a little glitch early on. We had to be taught the rules of trade, and so we when we did make a trade because she had 9 million Browns, and her team really needed a little something, so we were like, okay, we'll trade. But we also
trade
had to
and
learn.
Then trade them back next week.
Not allowed to trade back.
To learn about collusion.
So that was I got a good hard lesson on that one. We did not. We kept it clean, but again. I didn't know that was in the rule book that you couldn't scratch someone's back and they scratch it back for you. But other than that, it was fun. It was really fun because I was intimidated by her because she really wanted to learn fantasy football and she was so excited and she's reading everything and constantly telling me about my team and who is on my bench, and that drove me nuts after a while. So but I'm glad she had a really great time, and it was fun.
And she actually ended up making the playoffs as well. She was actually the higher seed, and the two of you matched up in the playoffs. So
we did. I ended up beating her by 0.18. I mean, it was a nail biter, and we were having fun texting back and forth because it was crazy. It was similar to the final that I had with you, Matt. It was like you'd have one player up. Oh my, not 0.18, not at the end, but at the beginning, it was like you had one player that would score a certain amount and I'd have one down, and then mine would score the same and down. And so we were really close. And I kept asking Den, I'm like, does it look like I can win? I don't want to be excited. And he's like, oh, hang on there, man. There's a lot still happening. And then it got to the point where I was pretty good ahead of you, and you only had one player left. I had one player. My player is a little better than your player. And he finally looked at me and said, I think you can call it. And so it was fun.
My last player was Jaron Hall, and he just decided he wanted to make you feel even better. So he actually took points away from me.
He did that. I said, did you see that? There's no points.
In the afternoon, as soon as when Denver had first and goal at the 1, and I thought, well, they're just going to hand it to Javonte, and that's that'll help keep me in it. And as soon as they couldn't even get the snap off, and Quinn Miners got off a false start, I was like, well, this game's over. The chances of them scoring from the 6 were 0. I've watched enough Broncos football the last decade to know that unless they're gifted a touchdown, it's not happening.
Well, I was getting a little confused with my players because my husband loves to watch the red zone, which drives me bananas. It's always popping.
My wife hates the red zone too. I kind of love it if you can get it because you're just getting to see every game.
I know you all do, but I want to finish a play. And so I knew that he had some players that he needed to get points. I knew my players. Next thing you know, I'm like cheering for his players, but I thought they were my players. And then he's like, those are my players. I'm like, oh, well, that's nice. And then I'd be like, just that red zone kills me. I just can't do that one.
So overall, it probably helps to win a championship. But did you find that you enjoyed fantasy football?
I do. I enjoy fantasy football because my husband enjoys fantasy football. I support his love and passion for it. But it is fun because outside of the house, I get to talk smack to the guys at work too a little bit, and I actually sound like I know what I'm talking about, and it's really fun, and it's also fun to be able to lean into somebody that has such experience like Dennis and be able to offer his services to my friends who need advice. And so fantasy football is really cool, and I am an advocate, and I have a pretty good 30-second elevator speech about it, why people should do it, and what does it mean to be in a dynasty league. So I listen to him. He may not think I do, but I do listen. So it is fun, and to beat all of you, it's the best.
So. I'm gonna get her I won my husband's fantasy league t-shirt.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Good. You know what it means to be in a dynasty league? It means that the same player disappoints you year after year until you die or he retires.
Yeah. But no, thank you guys.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis. Anything else you want to throw out there?
No, we'll let her get on with her evening. I know we've kept her for 18 weeks now, and we'll let her get to her post-football life.
Well, she's got to spend the next few months strategizing how she's going to beat us again.
I know. I tell you. Well, thank you guys very much. It was fun, and thanks for having me on your little show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, congratulations.
Great. Congrats. Thank you.
Love you.
Bye-bye. Love you. Bye.
You just say that.
Oh, that was humiliating.
I forgot I lost twice. That's the other problem when you have so many sad teams. There was a lot of sadness down the stretch. Speaking of sadness, like I mentioned, if you have a Week 18 matchup, it may not be spectacular for you in terms of all the players that are or are not available. And we will start. We're going to look at Saturday games, and then we're going to quickly breeze through the Sunday games that don't have a lot of playoff relevance, which is spoiler alert, most of them. Saturday, though, the Ravens are not going to be playing Lamar and their stars. They've already clinched the number 1 overall seed, but Pittsburgh has a lot on the line. Pittsburgh 9-7 at the Ravens 13-3. That is the first game of the weekend. Mason Rudolph will remain the starter, even though Pickett is healthy enough to play. Dennis, do you like that move for the Steelers?
I mean, Rudolph has shown a penchant for pushing the ball down the field. The running game has improved with Rudolph in there. George Pickens has been a monster. I think you have to stick with it because it's clearly working better than things were early in the season. Do I think Pickett can do that? maybe, but over a year and however many games he started this season, he hasn't shown the willingness to do it. And whether most of that can be attributed to Matt Canada or not, I guess we'll have to wait and see this offseason. But right now the Steelers are hot, and I think that it would be detrimental to the locker room to pull Mason Rudolph until he starts to stink it up. And, I think we can rest assured at some point he will.
If they win, they have a decent shot at sneaking into the playoffs. If they win and they make it into the playoffs, do you start them again wild card weekend?
I think you have to. I mean, it would be because if you win, it means he's still scoring points, and you need points to win. And if Rudolph is going to get you there. Now, the thing with Rudolph is he's been in the league now for 6 years, 5 years. I'm going to keep going back to that, what is kind of becoming my mantra, and that, he started a lot of games in college, played early in his NFL career, probably wasn't ready. He wasn't an elite prospect, but he played early and struggled. Last year, I don't think he was active for a single game, but he just keeps working and just kept working and just kept working. And Mitch Trubisky should have paid attention.
Part of me wonders if he would have gotten more of a shot, except for that one kind of weird season where Ben was gone, and I don't think Rudolph's played much in the last 2 years. Yeah. Well, and didn't Rudolph get into like that weird, ugly situation with Myles Garrett? And
he did.
I think it's taken them a little bit of time to kind of win people back over. On the flip side, for the Ravens, they're not playing Lamar. It doesn't sound like they're going to play much of anyone. OBJ only needed 5 receptions to make a bonus, and he basically tweeted something like, "Don't bet on me this week," making that bonus. So,
that's one of those things I think where they're going to say, "Yeah, you'd probably got it. We'll give it to you."
What I was going to ask is, the last time the Ravens were the number 1 overall seed, they sat everybody the final week of the regular season, and then they had that somewhat stunning home loss to Tennessee in their first playoff game. There was a lot of chatter when they were winning big among the commentators last week that they may want to rethink that. Looks like they aren't. They're doing the exact same thing. So Lamar will basically have had 3 weeks off. I expect, probably, I think you do too, that he's going to end up being the NFL MVP, which I believe is the same thing that happened during that season. Is it a mistake for them not to give him any snaps, or would the bigger mistake if they put him in there and he blows something?
So it's only a mistake if they put him in there and he gets hurt. If they put him in there and he comes out unscathed, you can talk about, well, it was risky, maybe they shouldn't have done it. But there's definitely some merit to getting your reps in live action. But let's face it, Lamar's 27, 28 years old now. He's a few years older than his MVP season last time. I'm okay with it, I guess. But we've seen it happen a lot of times where, like, I think Tony Dungy's teams, when he was in Indianapolis, he was notorious for sitting them the final week of the season, and then they couldn't turn it back on. It's a risk you take in an effort to mitigate taking risks.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how it plays out. Next up, the other Saturday game is one that definitely has huge playoff ramifications. It is win and you are in for the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. Both of them are 9-7. Whoever wins is in. This is one of the few games where if you have fantasy relevant players, you can be sure they're all going to be playing hard. What are you expecting from some of the Oh, I forgot. I am taking the Steelers in the first game.
I want to take the Ravens, but I just can't count on Melvin Gordon. So I'm going to take the Steelers.
So back to Texans Colts. What are your expectations for, Nico Collins should be playing? We figure Pittman and Jonathan Taylor should be pretty solid. Any other Colts you're interested in? CJ Stroud, probably an automatic start.
Yeah. And Devin Singletary has been playing great. and he's got an incentive to reach. I think he needs like 84 yards or something, and he makes like another $250,000 or $100,000. That's not something to sneeze at. So I like the Texans in this game. I just think they're a better team. I think CJ Stroud will get them there. So Nico has looked great. My curiosity with him is going to be, what do the Texans do in the offseason? Do they think he can be their alpha?
I am taking the Texans in this one.
I am as well.
Be a really fun story. I think Stroud can lock up Rookie of the Year if they get the win there.
I agree.
Moving on to Sunday games, we're going to start really quickly going through the kind of non-relevant for playoff purposes games. First up is the New York Jets 5-11 at the 4-12 New England Patriots. Be interesting if it's Belichick's final game. This game is so irrelevant. My question for you is about a player who's no longer on the Jets, and that's Dalvin Cook. You know, he signed with the Jets to maybe get a ring and be a veteran presence. We saw him almost entirely phased out. I'm sure you weren't shocked that they cut him free. He's now on the Ravens practice squad. What do you think becomes of Cook in the playoffs and beyond?
I mean, he clearly looked like he was washed. Can he bounce back next year and have a better season? You know, having a year where you don't get a lot of work could be helpful when you play a position like running back where you're taking a lot of hits. You know, Dalvin's calling card was his acceleration, and he just didn't have it anymore. He's got good vision. So he's the type of back I think goes somewhere looking for an opportunity to be the 2. The 1B, I guess, is probably more appropriate. That's what he's looking for. You weren't going to get that at the Jets, not with Breece Hall. I'm not sure what he believed. I think he's riding the Ravens. He's going to be there as a.
I mean, I have to be honest. I'd take him over Melvin Gordon. Maybe that's my bias, but
I think I would too. And if he gets a chance to play this week, he may show that if they need a third back, it should be him over Melvin. But going into the playoffs, and it's going to be Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, who've both been productive.
And I think for me, I'm holding Dalvin Cook for a while this offseason if you've got him, because you're not going to be able to sell him for anything. Be curious to see where he goes. Back to that game, I am actually taking the Patriots.
I think I'm going to take them as a home, just because they're the home team.
Yep. Next up, the Cleveland Browns 11-5 at the Cincinnati Bengals 8-8. The Bengals have been eliminated. The Browns are locked into the 5 seed. They have already said that they are not playing any of their starters or relevant players, which includes Joe Flacco. They're not even letting PJ Walker touch the field. It is, well, I think I saw Jeff Driscoll.
Yeah.
Because Dorian Thompson-Robinson's on the IR, so his season pretty well over. Is there anything that you're curious to see in this one?
Maybe can Pierre Strong handle the workload? They'll probably bring John Kelly up from the practice squad, who seems to have performed when he's gotten an opportunity, but I don't know that for whatever reason, he just can't seem to climb the depth chart past RB 4 or 5. Maybe Cedric, this may be the first game that Cedric Tillman is the 1A receiver. And so, unfortunately, he's got Jeff Driscoll throwing him the ball. So that's not going to be great, Bob. It's going to be rough.
I'm kind of curious to see if the Bengals give a little bit more work to Chase Brown, because I think both you and I have thought there's a possibility they move on from Mixon this offseason.
The thing, I think we're going to see that. But the thing with Mixon is it feels like he's going to be willing to take team-friendly deals because of the potential of winning a title. And they lost their quarterback, who's one of the few non-running quarterbacks that can produce like top-end fantasy numbers. I mean, a healthy Burrow could throw 50 touchdowns in any given season. And that's helpful for a guy like Joe Mixon. So I could see him, sticking around and splitting time with Chase Brown in another effort to chase a ring. But I don't know how much we're going to see of Burrow this week. Or
we're definitely not. I was going to say we're definitely not going to see Joe Burrow unless he's done something to piss them off greatly.
Yeah, I'm going to go Browns.
I am going Browns as well. Next up, the 7-9 Minnesota Vikings, who played themselves out of the playoffs last week, at the 11-5 Detroit Lions. Lions have already won the North. They're pretty well locked into the 3 seed. I guess there is a doomsday scenario where both the Eagles and Cowboys lose, where Detroit could vault with a win up to the 2 seed, but probably pretty well locked in. I have not seen anything major about their starters. Do you expect them to play starters and play to win?
Dan Campbell seems to be a play to win guy. And so I feel like I think they need to get a victory to wash the taste of last week's debacle out of their mouth. And so I think they're going to come out and they're going to play to win. And so that means we'll probably see we'll see.
I wouldn't be surprised if they play at least the first half.
Yeah, we'll see plenty of Craig Reynolds and Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond, but in the first half, I agree.
What I'm mildly excited to see is, Teddy Bridgewater has announced his retirement postseason. I would think they would be a little bit motivated to give him some regular season snaps as something of a send-off, because they're hoping not to see him play in the postseason. Not because he's bad, but because that would mean bad things. I'm still taking the Lions in this one.
So am I. I just think that the Vikings
are washed.
Yeah, they've got a little something going on there.
Denver Broncos 8-8 at the 7-9 Las Vegas Raiders. Both teams eliminated from the playoffs. Broncos are technically playing to get a winning season. I didn't realize we have not beaten the Raiders since they moved to Las Vegas. What an ominous sign. The Raiders, potentially playing to make Antonio Pierce's case, Aiden O'Connell's case. Is there anyone you're kind of interested in seeing here? It's Jarrett Stidham versus Aiden O'Connell in this one.
I'd like to see Zamir White keep it up. If he can go out and put up another big game, he might be making the case for them to maybe not invest in a high-end RB, either in free agency or the draft. Let him take the opportunity while they spend resources on offensive line or defense, or trying to keep Devontae Adams happy.
It's kind of weird. This is how Josh Jacobs' probably time with the Raiders ends. Hasn't he been out? This is either third or fourth week in a row.
Yeah.
I am taking the Raiders in this one.
I'm going to defer to you since you're the Denver guy.
The Raiders have the better coach. Next up, technically, I think Seattle has a potential chance if a whole bunch of dominoes fell right, but their loss last week crushed them. So Seattle 8-8 at the 4-12 Arizona Cardinals. Honestly, I am just going to say I'm taking the Cardinals in this one. They have looked like a better team, but should they be trying to win?
So from a fantasy football perspective, dynasty manager, no, they shouldn't be trying. But I understand the competitiveness, and Kyler wants to show the new head coach, hey, dude, I'm a dog out here. I'm going to get victories. The Cardinals have started, I think this will be the first week all year that they've had a change in their starting offensive line. So Calvin Beachum is having to step in for, I forget who the left tackle was that's injured, but veteran Beachum will be in there. James Conner's been playing his butt off, Amari DiMarcado and Michael Carter. We even saw Michael Wilson come back to life last week. And then Trey McBride has just been a monster. So I like the Cardinals. I think they're playing. They have embraced, I think, that play for pride thing.
Be curious to see what happens to Pete Carroll after this one. Are you taking the Cardinals as well?
Yeah, I'll take the Cardinals.
Next up, the 10-6 Kansas City Chiefs at the 5-11 Los Angeles Chargers. Chiefs are locked in as third seed. They have already announced they're sitting everyone. The Chargers are not choosing to sit everyone. They just don't have any players left. So is there anything you want to see in this game?
I want to see if the Chiefs activate and feature Deneric Prince at all. He was a deep stash dynasty running back, showed pretty well in pass protection. I think he had the highest pass protection grade in the nerd score for Garrett Price. And he's a pretty athletic back with good size. So I'd like to see him get some run and see what he can do. And I'd like to see any wide receiver in Kansas City show that they should be out there, somebody besides Rashee Rice.
Well, I don't think Rice is even going to play.
He's not.
The Chargers are just a mess. I'm still taking the Chiefs, even though I can't believe I'm willingly picking Blaine Gabbert. Welcome to Week 18 of the NFL. I'm so glad we have 17 games. The wonder that it has brought us. The 9-7 Los Angeles Rams at the 12-4 San Francisco 49ers. Both teams sitting starters. They are both locked in. The Rams are locked in at, I believe, at the 6th seed, and the 49ers already have the number 1 seed. We have already gotten the announcement. We are seeing Carson Wentz versus Sam Darnold, and I have to tell you, I'm moderately excited to see that. How about you?
So I have felt that Carson Wentz should have been signed way earlier in the season when there were quarterback issues going on throughout the year. I said it several times. I get it. There's something about him that doesn't click well in struggling locker rooms. I'll just put it that way. If the team is winning, it seems to be fine. And you see that in just about every sport. When the team is winning, these, quote unquote, weirdos in the locker room are fine. But when the team is losing, then it becomes a problem. But it's like that in any workplace, honestly. It isn't just sports. So for whatever reason, Wentz didn't, is he a guy that is worthy probably of where he was drafted? It seems not. Same with Darnold. But I feel like the two of them are now at that veteran stage of their career where, they got to be better than Taylor freaking Heineke, Case damn Keenum. I mean,
I feel like Darnold likes where he's at because he got a somewhat decent contract. He's on a great team. I mean, I think winning and being in a successful environment might do wonders for him. Carson Wentz, I'm curious because we obviously saw what even making an end of the season couple of starts did for Baker Mayfield to kind of rehab his image and the way people thought, if Carson Wentz goes out there and throws for 350, 400 yards and looks great, who knows what, like what you're saying, might parlay it into something else.
Well, he could parlay it. I'm looking up his age here real quick. I think
he's the same age as Jared Goff, so because that was the draft they came in. Goff was 1.
He's 31 years old. So, if he plays well and does the right things, even if Stafford comes back, it might make sense for him to stay behind Stafford, with Stafford potentially being out in 2 years, Wentz doing the clipboard Jesus thing, and maybe in 2 years he's their bridge quarterback because Lord knows they're not going to have a high draft pick.
Yeah. Well, and there's something to be said about staying in a stable environment with a good coach where you have a chance to win.
Yeah.
I'm taking the 49ers.
So am I.
Elijah Mitchell, I think they have enough. Now we're on to games that actually have playoff ramifications, and I don't laugh, but the first one is the 9-7 Jacksonville Jaguars at the 5-11 Tennessee Titans. Last year, this game was a win and you're in the playoffs. It's still the same thing for Jacksonville. If they win the South and they are in. If they lose, there's a very real chance they fall out of the playoffs. Trevor Lawrence missed last week. Been tracking towards playing. If he starts, are you feeling good about him?
I think you're feeling cautiously optimistic because I'd like to think they're not going to put him out there if he's going to injure himself. But to be fair, it probably doesn't take a whole heck of a lot to think he's better than C.J. Beathard. Evan Ingram's been having a great year. Ridley is running hot and cold. we finally saw Travis Etienne come back to life last week. So if we had, which was 1 week too late for me to win a title, just putting it out there.
I think he knew that. He was keeping a checklist, and as soon as you were out, he was like, "Oh, I can go back to playing well."
And goddamn Florida guys. But no, I think that it's going to be a game where they're playing hard because they know they can get in. Vrabel's going to try to make it an ugly game. I think he's going to try to establish Derrick Henry, but it's Tannehill again, and it's at some point you have to say, it's time to go, and Tannehill's there. I don't think we're going to see a Joe Flacco like resuscitation to Ryan Tannehill's career.
Kind of the swan song for Tannehill and Henry. So, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have some juice, but I'm still taking the Jaguars.
So am I.
Next up, a couple of big games for the NFC South. The first of those is the 7-9 Atlanta Falcons, who are still technically alive for the division, at the 8-8 New Orleans Saints. And Dennis, can anything short of making the playoffs save Arthur Smith's job, or is it?
So Mike, I can't answer this without knowing how good of friends Arthur Smith and Arthur Blank and Fred Smith are. So there's not a lot of people in that billionaire class. And so those two guys, I got to say, they probably know each other. And Fred Smith is probably helping grease the wheels for Arthur to keep
they carried him after last year, because most of us thought he was toast last year.
Yeah, he should be gone. He should be gone if he makes the playoffs.
I think if he makes the playoffs, he gets a reprieve. But anything short of that, I would be shocked. The Saints, meanwhile, there is quite a decent chance scenario that they win this game and still are not in the playoffs, even at 9-8. If they win and don't make the playoffs, what do you think happens with Dennis Allen and Derek Carr, or do you think they're pretty well safe no matter what?
I don't think Allen is safe. I think Allen is out even if they make the playoffs. Because I don't think they go deep in the playoffs. I think if they make it, they squeak in, they're one and done. I think Kamara is out this game.
Yeah, it looked like he was.
But the team just hasn't, the defense hasn't been great, and that's Allen's calling card. Derek, Carr's contract is such, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Kamara is questionable. He is not out, so that could be a big boost.
And I feel like the Saints just have they have enough to win the game, but I think the Falcons are going to pull the upset here.
I guess the guy I'm going in my championship, it's not the Ravens. He has the Steelers and the Saints. So might
need to change your pick.
Oh, no, I still think the Steelers are going to win because they have a lot of.
I was talking about the Saints.
Oh, I'm picking the Saints too. I don't believe in the Falcons, and honestly, I don't want there to be any doubt about the fact the Falcons need a new head coach. But I think when it's already leaked out that they've got their sights set on Eric Bieniemy, which I have mixed feelings about that after seeing what happened in Washington. I don't know. The other game in the NFC South that matters is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 8-8 at the 2-14 Carolina Panthers. And it only matters because all the Buccaneers have to do is win, and they are in. Dennis, what chance are you giving the Panthers of pulling what would be a dreadful upset?
I'll give them a non-zero chance, but it's pretty close to zero. Yeah. I don't.
Well, they're locked into the number one pick no matter what, which they don't own. So
right. So the Panthers just aren't good, and it isn't that the Buccaneers are good. It's just that the Panthers are way less good. I think Baker wants to win it, and Baker can be a little bit cult of personality-ish, and he's going to rally the team, and they need the win. They want the win. They've got Mike Evans. They've got Rashad White, Chris Godwin. Mayfield's going to do everything he can to win the game. So I think
So,
it'll be fairly easy.
better question might be, what are the odds David Tepper throws a drink on fans again this week?
Well,
Probably non-zero also.
I don't know. That was an expensive drink, let me tell you.
I'm honestly surprised he didn't get suspended, but I am taking the Buccaneers in this
So
one.
am I.
Next up, a very fascinating game. Chicago Bears 7-9 at the Green Bay Packers 8-8. The Bears going to just be playing for pride, but the Packers, it's a win and you're in, home game to end the season. Dennis, a lot going on. The Bears have the number 1 overall pick, but if Fields gets a win here in Green Bay, what does that do for his chances of being back in Chicago?
Unfortunately, I feel like the decision has already been made in Chicago. And there's a lot of people pulling for Fields. A lot of teammates have come out and voiced their support. We've seen some media members talking about why they should keep him. We've seen some talking about why they should get rid of him. I think I like Fields. He's got some improvement to make in the passing game. But if you look back over the course of NFL history, quarterbacks with that running skill set like that, they don't typically throw for 4,000 yards. So holding him to that kind of standard, he just needs to throw efficiently, make the right throws, don't turn the ball over, get his rushing yards, set up the offense so that, the running backs and wide receivers. I mean, DJ Moore has had a phenomenal season. Cole Kmet was having a great year. The real question for me from a fantasy standpoint is that if Fields stays in Chicago and is the quarterback, are we pretty much limited to, one receiver, tight end, and a low end mid RB2 running back if they give it to just one guy, because Fields is going to be the offense.
I was checking the Packers injury report because you can't take for granted. Dillon is out. It looks like Watson and Reed are officially listed as questionable. So is Dontavian Wicks. So how are you feeling about this offense? It still feels like receiver roulette. Dobbs is going to play, and Bo Melton, as you said, looked good last week, but the other three feels like a little bit of a coin flip.
I don't feel good about Watson playing. I think Reed will probably play. Wicks, I was surprised he didn't play last week. I haven't followed his practice reports this week, so Aaron Jones has looked great. I think they'll use a lot of Tucker Kraft in this game. So with the Packers and what they have on the line, I think it's going to be the Packers.
I am taking the Bears. See how it shakes out. Next up, we have back-to-back games that are very important for the NFC East. First, the Philadelphia Eagles, 11 and should be 5, I think. 11-5 at the 5-11 New York Giants. I can't do math. This I'm still getting used to this new 17-game math schedule. The Eagles, they can win and still not win the NFC East and still end up as a wild card on the road at either Tampa Bay, New Orleans, or Atlanta next week. But how important is it for them to win and to have a strong defensive showing? That last game with the Giants, I thought they'd win fairly handily. The Giants made quite a run on them.
So I think the Eagles, they need to win. They've lost, 4 of 6 or something like that, without looking at the schedule. But
It's 4 of 5.
4 of 5. And a defense that was really strong against the run to begin the season has given up a ton of yards. Almost, I think they've averaged 150 yards over the last 6 games, something like that. We hear a ton about how poor they are in pass coverage, but they're not good against the run either. And this may be a great dessert game for Saquon Barkley. somewhere where he can leave that final taste in people's mouth about, oh, how good he is. Let's watch him go. But ultimately, I think the Eagles have what it takes to win this game. I think Devontae Smith is questionable to out, but Olamide Zaccheaus will step up, and it'll likely, if Smith is out, it'll probably be like a 15 target AJ Brown game.
Or Julio Jones, who got 2 touchdowns last week. Fantasy zombie.
So I think the Eagles have what it takes. I'm taking the Eagles.
I'm taking the Eagles too, and I think they need to have some kind of a showing. That switch to Matt Patricia hasn't done a lot for their defense. But speaking of Patricia, I don't know, did you see the report that Belichick wanted to keep him as the offensive coordinator in New England, and Robert Kraft said no?
I did not. He'll be the offensive coordinator in Washington next year with Belichick.
God. The Dallas Cowboys 11-5 at the Washington Commanders 4-12, thanks to a confluence of incredible events. All the Cowboys need to do is beat the lowly Commanders to be the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. So, Dennis, what odds are you giving the Commanders pulling this upset?
10% maybe. I mean, is Brissett out again this week?
Yeah, I think they still have to roll with Howell.
So the only reason I would give it to Howell is because he's shown he can take the beating and still chuck it down the field. And so maybe he pulls a couple big plays out of his behind.
Brissett's not on the injury report, so I don't remember seeing. I honestly haven't tracked a lot of Washington. I'm not sure it matters.
I think Washington is sitting Brissett because they're sitting at the number 3 pick, and they don't want to screw that up. They don't want to Lovie Smith it.
They're definitely another team that should not be trying to win. But, yeah, I mean, when has that ever stopped anyone? I am taking the Dallas Cowboys, and I would not want to be Mike McCarthy having to walk back to pick up his belongings from Dallas if they lose.
Cowboys for me as well.
It's because they won't let him on the plane. Sunday Night Football has huge stakes and a huge wide variety of outcomes. We'll know by the time the game starts whether Buffalo is playing even to be in the playoffs. But with a win, Buffalo is the number 2 seed and the AFC East champions, and Miami goes all the way to the 6th seed because Cleveland is locked in as the 5 seed. If Miami wins, Buffalo could still be the 6th seed, the 7th seed, or completely out of the playoffs. That is quite a setup and scenario, which is why it is the final game of the regular season. Dennis, we have not seen, it's now 10 straight games, no 100-yard day for Stephon Diggs. Do you think that they will even try to get him going in this finale?
The Dolphins have a couple good cornerbacks, and so that I think you've got to, but Josh Allen just hasn't passed great this year. The volume has been down, the touchdown percentage is down, the interception percentage is up, and it seems to be working with with him vulturing the touchdowns and the running game.
Xavier Howard got ruled out.
Oh, well,
and Bradley Chubb towards ACL.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Chubb. So those are all good things for Buffalo.
Yeah, for Buffalo. Not great for Miami. No, I was just looking. I didn't realize Xavier Howard was out either. So,
I mean, I felt like for the last couple of weeks that we've been at that he's got to get back on track point, right? We're due.
And I feel like his last big game, I'm going to look right now, was actually the game where they beat the Dolphins in Buffalo.
Yeah, I just think that
Diggs is 6 for 120 and 3 touchdowns. That was his best game of the year, week 4 against the Dolphins.
So Diggs has still been getting the target volume to be very productive. It just hasn't produced the yardage or the touchdowns. And they haven't been going away from him. Gabe Davis has had a couple blow-up games. Dalton Kincaid has had a couple good games. I think that Buffalo is going to continue to do what they do. Diggs is probably in line for somewhere between 7 and 12 targets this week. It'll come down to, can he turn them into big yardage or touchdowns?
Meanwhile, for Miami, Waddle still banged up, questionable. Mostert still banged up, is questionable. We mentioned that they are without Howard and Chubb. They had already lost Jalen Phillips. They're coming off of a pretty savage beatdown, and they have struggled mightily against good teams. What are you feeling for Miami here?
They got to beat a good team eventually, right?
Well, I mean, technically they beat Dallas.
So I think that Miami's, they've lost Jalen, what was it?
Jalen Phillips
and Bradley Chubb. I mean, we saw what losing your two best defenders did to Washington, two best defensive linemen. I think that's gonna hurt Miami. If Waddle is out, we have seen Miami struggle a little bit when they don't have both of those weapons. Cedric Wilson and Braxton Berrios and the cast of crazies there. They just don't have the talent of Waddle and Hill. So when one of those guys is out, they can struggle a little bit. I think that it's going to be a decent scoring game. I could see it being, 35-28 or something like that. I could see it being, maybe 31-24 or something. So I don't think it's going to be a snooze fest. But I think I'm going to go with the Bills. I just think they've got a little more hunger.
I'm going with the Buffalo Bills too, which likely means no matter what Pittsburgh does, they won't be able to make the playoffs. So if we followed all of our picks, the AFC slate, if Dennis and I are correct, would end up being Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, Jaguars, Browns, Dolphins, Texans. And the NFC slate, if Dennis and I are correct, would end up being the 49ers, Cowboys, Lions, Buccaneers, Eagles, Rams, and you picked the Packers and I did not. So it would either be Packers or Saints.
We'll see.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see. We will be back on Tuesday looking at all that, figuring out who made the playoffs, and more than likely talking about a lot of coaching openings, because typically, it usually starts even on Sunday night after the games, but certainly news will break on Monday. Dennis, if the people are looking they don't have very long to go till actual NFL games, just tomorrow afternoon, but if they're looking to fill the void or relive those good times, what can they do?
Go to your favorite podcast platform, search out the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, hit that subscribe button, hit that like, leave us a rating and a review.
And as I teased on Tuesday, we are going to have a playoff challenge. The winner gets an automatic berth into the redraft league for next year.
Maybe they can beat my wife.
Maybe. There's a no negative scoring. It's going to be 6-point universal touchdowns, 1 point for 25 pass, and 10 yards rushing or receiving PPR. We are doing 4 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 4 receivers, 2 tight ends. You take one from each of the 14 playoff teams. We will start blasting the link out this weekend. We will definitely blast them out again next week on Tuesday. The rosters will be due in by Friday night next week, so a week from tonight, because the playoffs will start next Saturday. It's just a fun way to keep the fantasy season alive and to see how we can all do. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for and start strategizing your rosters.
Do a playoff challenge and get blasted.
Can't be any worse than some of our regular season teams. But that'll do it for us today. Hope you guys have a wonderful week 18 of the NFL season. We'll see you guys again on Tuesday.